In 1936, railway workers excavating outside Baghdad unearthed a seemingly normal clay jar, but upon further inspection, they found something interesting. There was a copper cylinder sealed at the base, along with an iron rod poking through an asphalt stopper at the opening. The artifact was sent to the Iraq Museum, where Wilhelm König, an Austrian archaeologist and the museum's lab director, studied it in detail. He believed that it was one of the most strangest artifacts he ever found, a clay jar that might have held electric power more than 2,000 years ago. So 2 years after the discovery, he published his assessment, suggesting that the jar might have actually been a galvanic cell, or in other words, an ancient battery. But to many, this didn't make any sense, because the jar itself dates somewhere between 150 BCE and 250 CE, long before the invention of modern batteries. His reasoning drew upon observations of local jewelers, who reportedly use similar devices for electroplating, a complex process that helps improve the durability of jewelry. Because of this, he theorized that ancient inhabitants used these vessels to plate silver objects with gold, citing thin metallic layers on artifacts from Mesopotamia. However, when specialists analyzed these layers, the coating proved to be mercury gilding, a process that relies on heat, not electrical current. Throughout all of the artifacts they have found, no evidence of ancient electroplating has been discovered in Mesopotamia. Alternative theories suggested medical applications. Perhaps these vessels delivered mild electrical stimulation for pain relief, comparable to Roman use of electric eels for therapy. In 1993, Paul Kaiser published a paper proposing that the jars may have been employed for an acupuncture-like stimulation. Yet this remains purely speculative. No supporting artifacts have been recovered, and no ancient medical texts reference such use. So if it wasn't used for electroplating, and it wasn't for medicine, what was it? Luckily, one archaeologist connected some dots. Before the Baghdad battery was discovered, excavations yielded 10 similar pots. 4 came from Seleucia, 6 from Ctesiphon. When archaeologists examined their contents, they found papyrus scrolls, plant material, bronze cylinders filled with cellulose fibers, lead plates, and iron nails wrapped in organic substances. It's likely they were components of magical practices, such as protection rituals, curses, and vessels designed to trap hostile spirits. The Baghdad battery itself was also buried alongside incantation bowls and ceramic vessels inscribed with Aramaic text, which was created specifically to ensnare evil spirits. In Mesopotamian culture, copper and iron held profound symbolic significance. Copper was featured prominently in protective incantations. Iron nails served to shield the contents of magical vessels, sealing their power within. However, the question remains, if the artifact served as a magical container, why does it generate electrical current? Numerous experiments have tested whether these vessels could indeed produce electricity. In 1939, Willard Gray used a copper sulfate as an electrolyte and obtained brief voltage readings. Decades later, Arne Ergebrecht claimed to have performed electroplating using grape juice as the medium, though no documentation validates this statement. However, in both cases, the replicas produced less than 1 volt each, about the same as the static charge from touching a doorknob, and far too weak to power anything. In 2005, Mythbusters had a clever idea. What if a single jar wasn't enough? They connected 10 replica vessels, each filled with lemon juice as the electrolyte, to see if the power could be combined. Together, the setup produced about 4.3 volts, roughly the same as 3 AA batteries. In theory, even a single volt can trigger electroplating under tightly controlled conditions, but the Baghdad battery's current output was far too weak and unstable for that to happen. The tiny surface area of the metals combined with leakage and corrosion meant any electrochemical reaction would fade almost immediately. The Mythbusters experiment confirmed what later tests have hinted. Yes, the jars could produce electricity, but not enough to do anything practical, especially electroplating. Looking closer, there seem to be many more issues with the device itself. First, the copper tube isn't sealed. Any liquid inside would simply leak or evaporate, breaking the chemical reaction that a real battery would need to function. Second, there's no way to complete a circuit. The copper cylinder has no terminal or connector, and the iron rod just sticks out from the top with nothing to attach it to. Third, the thick seal would make refilling and maintaining the jar almost impossible. If it were truly a working battery, the electrolyte would need to be replaced often. Corrosion would eat through the metals in weeks. And finally, the archaeological evidence doesn't back it up. No traces of copper salts, corrosion residues, or metal deposits have ever been found, which are all telltale signs of real electrochemical use. All of these points lead to one conclusion: it wasn't a battery at all. In 2003, during the US invasion of Iraq, the museum was looted and the Baghdad battery disappeared, and at this point of this video release it has not been found. People speculate that there could have been something archaeologists missed, and maybe the device had a different use. But even after many recreations, the main belief is that it was made for mystical purposes. With the original artifact lost, and only replicas to study, the Baghdad battery remains an enigma. Whether if it was a tool for magic, medicine, or simply misinterpretation, one thing is certain: it continues to spark curiosity thousands of years after it was buried.